the repugnant post made today of an image, a falsified image, of an Australian soldier threatening a young child with a knife.
After China took trolling to a whole new level on Monday, it seems the PM's emotional demand for an apology had a huge effect. Just not the one he was hoping for. Instead, he got this.
People wondered why a national leader would have such a strong opinion to an artwork done by a normal young artist in China.
And tens of thousands of trolls have taken to WeChat and Twitter to call ScoMo everything from stupid and arrogant to troublemaker, lunatic and crazy dog. This last one in particular is a huge insult in Chinese culture.
These new pro-China accounts that are really critical of Scott Morrison in Australia, they're very inflammatory. They're looking to pick divisive issues and really trying to bait. It's not random that all of these new accounts are posting about the same topics.
According to metrics compiled here in Australia, the attack is working, with Aussie social media users taking the bait and keeping the thread alive with their replies.
Certainly there are patterns that are similar in some ways to what we've seen in recent reports into Chinese disinformation and information operations.
It's all pretty ironic given Chinese President Xi Jinping has a blanket ban within his country on any post that likens him to Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, bother.
There is a very closely connected social ecology here. So these accounts are not disconnected from the broader pro-China activity that's on Twitter.
So how big is this social media army and what more damage could it do?
Someone who knows all about this is Associate Professor Titus Chen from National Sun Yat-sen University in Taiwan. Professor Chen, how many of these keyboard warriors are there and how well organised are they?
Well, keyboard warriors ranges from scores of them to thousands of them, depending on the importance of issues at hand. For this single case, I don't think it is successful because Australia unites because of this humiliating message. So what Beijing wants to achieve is to divide and conquer the nation. It did not do that job.
In your view, what's the best way for a country to deal with these sort of attacks, I guess?
Well, I think the main point, the agenda from Beijing is to stimulate a negative emotion from recipients of these humiliating messages. So from my understanding, the best way to deal with this is not to play the game by Beijing's rule. Don't walk into its minefield. Remain calm and focus on the real challenging issues.
If you say that it's best, in a sense, to ignore them, does that mean that, in your view, Scott Morrison made a mistake when he responded to the initial offensive tweet?
I can say from past experiences that I think Prime Minister is doing a good job in terms of uniting the nation to form a national unity behind him. So even politicians of different political parties sided with Prime Minister and the government this time. And that, I think, is very important. And plus, he reached out to local Chinese communities. I think that's very, very important, and that's an excellent job.
Professor, what about the emotion that came from our Prime Minister? Was that wise, or would it have been better for him to keep the emotion out of his response?
Well, I think this is his very first time. So when you have a first time, well, afterwards, you wish you could have done a better job. So I hope in the future, and there will be more attacks like this to humiliate Australian government. I hope in the future he could delegate this kind of response to maybe from Defense Ministry, from Foreign Ministry spokesperson, someone at the same level with Mr. Zhao, who's a spokesperson of Chinese MOFA, can and should respond. But Prime Minister, maybe next time, he want to focus on how to unite the nation in this deteriorating relationship with China.
Professor, just more broadly in terms of a rising China, you're in Taiwan. How threatened do the Taiwanese people feel about a rising China and a bid to, if you like, envelop Taiwan back into the mainland?
Well, we have been, subject to this kind of concerted, synchronized, choreographed online attack for a number of years. So we are the prime target of China's information operations. Chinese naval and air force flights visit Taiwan's airspace, on a daily basis, which is maybe just 50 miles away from my city. So we kind of enjoy it every single day.
Professor Chen, thanks very much for speaking to us.
Thank you for having me.
I realise that the expert advice is not to engage with China for all the reasons that the professor was talking about, and I also realise that doing so is risky in terms of our trade with them and how dependent we are. But for what it's worth, I'm glad that the Prime Minister stood up to China on this and called it out. They are a genocidal dictatorship. They're authoritarian. They don't respect the rule of law. They're not a country that is a democracy, and they never will be, frankly, with the direction that they're going. I like that Scott Morrison decided to call it out, even if the consequence of it isn't ideal, according to the experts.
I do wonder, though, how effective being trolled is. Like, what difference does it make? If the advice is just to ignore them, is it really going to make that much of a difference to Chinese offshore, who this is aimed at, clearly, who've left China and don't want to be there?
Well, the issue for me is that it was a senior Foreign Affairs Department official who retweeted it. If it was just the artist, that's one thing. So I'm just glad that he did it. But, it's not going to stop. We can see that because China haven't backed down one iota since this happened.
With so much content online, it's sometimes hard to keep up with it all. And let's face it, who has the time? The Project YouTube has you covered with the stories that matter. Hit subscribe for a daily list of the news that you need to know.